I've had it coming for years. I couldn't avoid it. It was either him or me. I have been caught dead. I can't escape my fate. I've had it coming for years. I couldn't avoid it. It was either him or me. I have been caught dead. I can't escape my fate. Where will this end? Everyone dies one day. I know it more than most, as the king of the grim reapers and the judge of the dead. This is the tale how I died. It all began. Fred Alexander sat backstage in his dressing room where he worked as a stage magician, waiting on a phone for an important conference call. "You look like it's an important call, Dad," said Fred's son, who knew how his father looked when he was waiting for a call. He was jumpy and anxious. "Yes, I, Morgan, Lakelandite, and Gabriel have to work out the details of an important summit," said Fred. "Good luck with it," said his son Valentine. "Thank you," said Fred. 5 minutes later, Fred's mobile rang, and he answered it quickly. "Fred Alexander speaking." "I know I called you my Emperor Sapphirus," said Morganite, the Prime Minister of the Universe, to Fred the Emperor of the Universe. "Is everyone on?" asked Fred. "Yes, I called everyone," said Morganite. "Good," said Fred. A stranger to Fred and the others hung up their mobile phone. "We lost the local emperor, Gabriel. He must be busy," said Morganite, noting the phone disconnecting from the conference call. "Was that anyone, Jeremy?" asked another reporter at the Clarion newspaper. "No, just a wrong number," said Jeremy Jones offhandedly. "Mark wants to see you about your article about the magicians," said his colleague. "Okay, thanks Greg," said Jones, walking to his editor's office to knock on his door. "Come in," called the editor, who was sitting at his desk behind piles of papers. Jones entered the room and walked to his boss to talk. "I can't publish your article. It would be bad for us to publish an article against the magicians. They are superheroes, not an alien invasion," said the editor. "I got a news scoop. I found out who their leader is," said Jones. "Who is he?" asked the curious editor. The Emperor Sapphirus was known, but who he was in real life was a mystery. "Fred Alexander, the stage magician and the king of the earth. I recognized his voice on the call," said Jones. "Call?" said the editor, puzzled. "I got called by accident by Morganite. His prime minister, the emperor, was identified," said Jones. "Oh, we can't publish it, though. It was a private phone call," said the editor. Jones rolled his eyes. "I'm serious. It is unethical publishing private phone calls," said his boss. "You can't be serious," said Jones. "I am. It could get us in big trouble with the law," said the editor. Days later, Jones stood waiting outside Fred's theater, waiting to see him with his fans after a show. He stood nervously and impatiently, waiting for the magician to leave the backstage door. "Hello, Mr. Alexander," said Jones when Fred appeared. Thinking him a fan, Fred responded jovially. "Hello, hope you didn't freeze out here while you were waiting to see me," said Fred. "It was a cold winter's night." "I'm fine, I brought a coat," said Jones. "Do you want an autograph?" asked Fred, pulling out a pen. "No, I wanted to talk to you in the pub across the road," said Jones. "I don't go to pubs, sorry," said Fred. "I need to talk to you." "I know who you are," said Jones. "Who am I meant to be?" asked Fred, laughing in his light musical tenor voice. "Sapphirus," said Jones seriously. Fred looked like a trapped rabbit. "What do you want?" said Fred, panicking. "To talk to you in the pub," said Jones. "All right," said Fred, knowing it was a trap. Val noticed he was scared. He walked up to his dad defensively. "Are you all right, Dad?" Val asked. He was like his father, a young, athletic-looking man. Neither were human, they were alien sorcerers who always looked 25. Jones felt a bit intimidated. "I'm fine, boy. I am going to the pub. I want to talk to him," lied Fred. "If it's okay, Dad, Val said. Yes, said Fred, feigning a charming smile. Fred and Jones walked to the pub. When they were there, Fred, who never drank because he was an easy drunk, but he was nervous so he bought a drink for him and the man he didn't know. Why did you want to talk to me? Who are you? Asked Fred. I'd rather not say, Jones said, relishing the anonymity. Fred sipped his drink nervously. I know who you are, said Jones, smiling cruelly. Fred sipped again. What do you want? Asked Fred. I want you to pay me, or I'll go to the press with what I know, lied Jones, who knew his boss would have nothing to do with it. I am not rich, said the scared emperor. Give me $500 a week, you can afford that, said Jones with a smile. Yes, said Fred, lying, thinking he'd have to rob his savings. He sipped again. Jones bought Fred another drink. His glass was empty. By the time they left, Fred was drunk after drinking 2 glasses of wine. Fred left with Jones. He was so drunk that he passed out when he left the pub. Jones took him to his apartment and, oddly, laid him in a cupboard to sober up. The drunk, hungover man lay with his eyes open with a sliver of light streaming in his eyes, blinding his eyes, as his head was killing him. He heard the man's voice fumbling over an enchantment. He got it wrong. Fred was so drunk, he shouted out the correct enchantment. The man repeated it outside the cupboard and thanked his inebriated friend. The man left the drunk to himself and came back. When the man came back, the drunk was asleep. He looked at the drunken emperor with disgust. He stabbed him in the heart with a knife he'd bought for the job and left him to die as he watched TV for a while. Then he stripped the corpse to get ready to dispose of it. Fred was left there in a pool of his own blood, stone dead, and no one missed him as his wife didn't live with him. It was promising to be a while before he was missed. Chapter 1: The Man Who Wouldn't Stay Dead. In the shadowy depths of a dark closet, an alien magician, Fred Alexander, King of the Earth and Emperor of the Universe, awakens, naked, confused, and definitely not dead. It was one day after a forgotten night at the pub, he found himself trapped by an unknown assailant intent on disposing of him. But death is merely an inconvenience for Fred, whose bizarre affliction grants him the ability to rise again. I must have been really drunk to be like this. He thought and wondered if he'd done anything stupid. Being naked, it would look a little odd to just stroll outside. But he must at least try, so try he did. Fred, being an enchanter, tried to leave using magic without opening the door, but he could not get through the door or walls, and they resisted all his efforts. Realizing someone had cast an entrapment spell on it, and it wasn't one of his own kind, it was more likely a human who had found a spell book. It was clumsy but effective. Fred realized this was a trap, that he couldn't escape. Fred saw blood on the floor. It was his blood. This confused and scared him. Fred looked at himself. He was unharmed. He thought he must have died, and unlike the rest of his kind, his body healed itself after he died. It had returned him to life. Suddenly a man with a butcher's knife opened the door of the cupboard, expecting to see a corpse. In the room behind him was a table of tools to cut up the corpse and dispose of it. The man was looking at him and was confused and very angry. "You're not dead?" the man said. "No," said Fred nervously. The man stabbed Fred in the heart, and the bleeding Fred dropped to the ground dead once more. The killer closed the door to let him bleed out as he washed his bloody hands and the knife. He then made a coffee and sat for a while. Later the killer came back, sure his victim would have bled out and so wouldn't make too much mess. He opened the door, looking at the floor to see a lot of blood and his victim's feet. "What?" said the killer, looking up. "I'm still here," Fred said nervously. "What are you?" asked the killer. Not dead," Fred said nervously. "I'll fix that," said the man, killing Fred again, stabbing him in the guts, leaving him to die again, angrily slamming the door. He came back a while later with an axe. Talking to the door, he said, "If you're not dead you'll wish you were," said the killer to the door before he opened it, expecting to find his victim alive again. He looked inside and found Fred lying bled to death on the floor. So with effort, the killer picked up the tall, slippery, bloody corpse out of the cupboard. He put him on the table and prepared to cut up the body. The killer raised and swung the axe over the neck of the corpse. It didn't hit the corpse's neck, it hit something else. The confused killer tried again, but it stopped again. "What's going on here?" said the killer, frustrated. The thing that stopped the axe appeared. It was made of metal and had a wooden handle. It was a scythe. "What?" said the shocked killer, seeing a stranger dressed in a black robe. "Are you here to take him?" "No," said the Reaper. "Why did you kill him?" "He was the leader of an alien hive," said the killer. "Leader of what? Does that look like a queen to you?" said the Reaper, pointing at the corpse. The killer looked at the blood-stained body. It was obviously male. "No," said the killer, "he was a king and emperor to the hive." "Isn't that the same thing?" "An emperor and king," said the Reaper pedantically. "Not in his case. They called him the emperor of the universe and the king of the earth," said the killer. "Oh, so that's who he was?" "Was he?" the Reaper asked. "Yes," said the killer. "Why are you protecting him?" The Reaper looked at the dead man. "Maybe I knew him in another life," said the Reaper. "Who are you?" asked the killer curiously. "I'd rather not say," said the Reaper. "Perhaps I'm his bodyguard." "What use is a dead alien? Let me dispose of him," said the killer. "No, I'd rather you didn't hack him up," said the Reaper. "Misguided loyalty," said the killer. "No," said the Reaper, who disliked zealots like this killer, who he was tired of and knew he knew too much to live. But the Reaper could not do anything yet. If he removed his weapon, Fred would lose his head. They both knew they were in a stalemate. If one of them removed their weapon, the other would strike. They stood like that for an hour chatting, neither flinching, waiting for the other to grow tired to no avail. 5 hours passed, and they grew tired. They were hardly able to keep their weapons' arms still. They grew shaky. In the 6th hour the killer grew drowsy and dropped his axe and fell to the floor. The robed man hit him on the head with the shaft of his scythe, knocking him unconscious. The Reaper walked over to the dead man, touched his chest, and was absorbed into the corpse, which promptly healed Fred, who came back to life. Fred sat up, disoriented, and saw the killer, knowing sadly he must die. No one could know about his afflictions of having a grim Reaper as a soul, and his dying and coming back to life would bring down his empire. He felt that a dead man or a living dead man should not be emperor. Fred slew his killer and dismembered him with the skill of a coroner, which he had been in a former life. He next disposed of the body and prayed that he would not get caught for his crimes, hoping he could just live his normal life again. He left the area and went home. Chapter 2: The Eye of the Storm. Sometime later, outside the entrance to the theater where Fred occasionally worked as a famous stage magician, a man walked up to him and asked, "Hello, are you Fred Alexander, the stage magician?" Fred smiled charmingly. "Yes, I am," answered Fred, thinking that this man must be a fan. The man took some photos out of a bag and handed them to Fred. "Do you want me to sign them?" Fred asked offhandedly. "Look at them, Mr. Alexander," Fred did, and was horrified at what he saw. "Are you all right, Dad?" asked his son Val, who was with him. "Yes," lied Fred, putting on a smile and hiding the pictures. I am fine." Fred invited the man to go on a private tour of the theater. The man naturally agreed. Fred took him to his dressing room. "What are these pictures? They are AI generated, right? Where did you get them?" asked Fred. "Not AI, I took them myself," said the man, observing Fred's reaction, who was like a rabbit in the headlights, a trapped animal. You took them?" said Fred. "Oh, I see. What do you want for them?" "You must pay for them with blood," said the stranger. Fred felt sick. He despised killers and killing. "Who am I meant to kill?" asked Fred. "A magician," said the stranger. "A stage magician?" asked Fred nervously. "No, one of the alien magicians," said the man. It struck him like a ton of bricks. He was one of them, and he didn't want to kill any one of them. Which magician? Asked Fred, feeling scared as he knew them. The king of the earth, said the blackmailer. Fred thought he was joking. Are you serious? Asked Fred. Yes, deadly serious, said the blackmailer. Fred was now even more scared. He knew the king and knew he could not kill him. He knew the king couldn't die. He was the closest thing to an immortal there was or would ever be. But he couldn't tell the man this. I will do as you ask, said Fred, knowing he couldn't. The stranger took the photos and left. Later, that week at an intergalactic political summit, while the celestial Emperor Sapphirus was mingling with politicians, his wife Anna observed he was distracted and looked as if he was looking for someone in the crowds of fans, friends, and political agents. Anna, are you all right? You look worried, said Fred's grandson Blake. I am, but Sapphirus is acting odd. He seems on edge and appears to be expecting something to happen. I'm sure something is bothering him. I asked him what was wrong, and he lied to me and said nothing was wrong, but he has never been able to lie to me, said Anna. I'll talk to him, said Blake. Maybe he'll open up to me. Thank you, you're precious, Blake, Anna said, and Blake wandered off to talk to Fred. Blake walked up to Fred and slapped him on the back. Fred was startled and jumped. Spinning around, he glared at Blake. Don't do that, boy, said Fred. For a moment he thought it was the blackmailer. Blake asked him to follow him to a private area for a chat. Fred refused to be led anywhere as he feared the talk he knew must come, and he didn't want to tell Blake about the blackmailer. Do I have to hypnotize you, Gramps? We need a powwow, said Blake firmly. No, said Fred reluctantly, but they eventually went to a quiet place to talk. Anna and I are worried about you. You are acting like you have problems, said Blake. Fred looked nervous and ashamed, and his eyes were shifting and never still. I am fine, said Fred, hiding behind a full smile. There you go lying again, said Blake shortly. I am not lying, said Fred, in a dramatic huff, knowing Blake was right. Fred had fear in his eyes. Blake knew him. He was very worried about something. Blake knew he was proud he had seldom asked for help, but this was a cry for help if ever he saw one, whether Fred knew it or not. Blake was determined to help him and find out what was bothering Fred. So Blake did all that he could do. He stalked Fred. Later, as Blake was following Fred, he saw Fred meet a man in the street. Fred seemed scared of this man, and he saw the man hand Fred a knife, which Fred accepted. The blackmailer left him. He was standing looking down at the knife in his hand. Blake stomped up to the startled Fred and snatched the knife. Who is the knife for, Fred? Blake demanded. Nobody, lied Fred. Nobody? Then why do you need a weapon? Blake asked. He wants me to kill someone, said Fred. Why? Asked Blake. He is blackmailing me. I was caught, said Fred. Doing what? Asked Blake, worried. Disposing of a body, Fred said sadly, looking at the ground. Whose body? Who killed it? Blake said, his eyes widening. I don't know. He kidnapped me and killed me and saw me come back to life a few times. He knew who I was. I had to kill him, said Fred, ashamed. I understand, but who does he want you to kill? Demanded Blake. The king of the earth, said Fred, sighing. You? Said Blake. Does he know who you are? No, Fred said. Great, that's simple. You can do that, said Blake with a smile. How? Asked Fred. I can't die, then say I killed myself. You can though, said Blake. You just need to do this. A puzzled Fred listened carefully, then nodded his head. A day later on another street, Fred and the blackmailer met a masked alien superhero, the magician, called the King of the Earth, who was said to be a fan of Fred's. He had seen him and the blackmailer together and came over for a signature. Okay, I'll give you a, said Fred, who was a fan of the king. Now, Alexander, shouted the blackmailer. Do I have to? Said Fred reluctantly. Do you have to what? asked the king. Do you want me to tell him what I know? Asked the blackmailer. Fred reluctantly pulled out the knife, and the puzzled king looked at it. Is this one of your tricks? Asked the king. Yes, said the blackmailer. Oh good, I like tricks, said the king. Fred closed his eyes and stabbed the king, who looked shocked and died. Is it done? Asked Fred, peeking. Yes, said the smiling blackmailer. Can I have the photos? Asked Fred. The blackmailer handed over the photos to Fred. Why don't you like the king? Asked Fred. I didn't like him, that's all I'll say, said the blackmailer. Another magician appeared out of thin air next to them. Dad, are you committing hari-kari? You know it won't kill you. If it did, I'd have done it myself, said the magician Lakelandite Blake's son. Thanks, boy, said Fred, who was Blake's older self. Fred and Blake were time travelers, the same one at different points in life. What's going on? Asked the confused blackmailer, who saw this as a trick and sang like a canary. He is a murderer. I caught him disposing of a body. I saw him. He has the photos. Lakelandite took the photos of the frightened Fred. Fred looked nervously at Lakelandite, who glared at his father Fred. Fred looked afraid of his son's reaction. Then Lakelandite laughed and shook his hand. Fred and the blackmailer looked at him as if he was mad. Welcome to the family. I thought you were a black sheep, the only clean skin in the family, said Lakelandite, who was a serial killer. He kept killing me, it was getting annoying, and he knew I couldn't die, Fred said. Lakelandite killed the puzzled blackmailer. Here's one on me, said Lakelandite. You psychopath, hissed Fred. Lakelandite wandered over and kicked the king. Hey, come on, come back to life, Lakelandite said. A grim reaper who was hiding came out of hiding and touched the body of the king and went poof, and the king got up. Psychopath, moaned the king, who was Blake, Fred's younger self in disguise. Chapter 3: The Prey of the Necromancer. No, I will not kill him, snapped the necromancer at his master Fate, Argent, who had another man to kill for a rather vicious murder no one but Fate knew of. I can't kill him, said Lakelandite, the necromancer Argent's hitman. You have to, that's your job, killing people for me, said Argent. I know, but it's not my job to kill him, shouted the necromancer. You kill whoever I say you kill, said his master. It's pointless killing him, I would have done it 1,000 times over, already, if I could have, said the necromancer truthfully. Is there something I don't know about him? Asked Argent. Nothing, lied the necromancer. Then he's going to pay for his crime, said Argent. Okay, said the hitman, knowing it was a ridiculous waste of time and downright stupid. The necromancer stomped off to find the man he had to kill. He was at an intergalactic political summit. Hello, boy, you look like you're having a bad day, said the man who the necromancer had to kill. I am, said the assassin. What happened? Asked the man. I've been told to kill a man, said the hitman. Oh, that again? What's wrong with that? You are always doing it, the man said. The man won't die, said the assassin glumly. Why? Asked the man. You tell me, Dad, said the necromancer, it's you. Oh, you really are having a bad day, said the celestial emperor Fred. Fate wants you dead for killing the man you murdered, said the son. He would, said Fred. What do you want me to do? Run, said the son, or there will be a second coming here. Not good, for politics. The emperor dying, agreed Fred. Bye-bye, and thanks for the warning. Fred wandered off to find his wife. He found her with his younger self, Blake. Fred and Blake were time travelers, actually one man, a single time traveler posing as two men, the grandson and the grandfather. Fred was the grandfather, Blake the grandson. She was technically the wife of both of them, being one man. She to the world was the younger man's wife. Hi Anna, my love. Hello there Blake, I was looking for you too, said Fred, kissing Anna. Hi, Fred, said Blake. Hi, honey, said Anna. I will be going away for a while, said Fred. Why? Asked Blake. I can't go into it now, I just had to tell you, said Fred, and seeing fate coming with his assassin, Fred disappeared into thin air, teleporting away. Hello Anna, said her cousin Fate. Hello Argent, Lakelandite, Anna said to Fate, Argent, and the necromancer her stepson Lakelandite. Where is Fred? Argent asked. I saw him come in here. He's gone, said Blake. Why are you looking for him? Asked Anna. Lakelandite is going to kill him, Anna, said Argent. He is a vicious killer. Anna looked worried. No he isn't, Anna said. He murdered a man and hacked him up, said Argent. He is not capable of doing that, said the shocked Anna, looking at Blake. He'd have to have a very good reason, said Blake. Anna was shocked. She had not known about the murder. Lakelandite and Blake knew Fred had to kill him to save Fred's life, and the man knew too much to live, but they couldn't tell Argent. Because Argent didn't know Blake was Fred. Blake hugged Anna. Anna, he's your husband's grandfather, he's nothing to you, said Argent, puzzled. Anna was upset because he was one of her husbands. Lakelandite walked up to Argent. Leave her alone, said Lakelandite, who knew Fred was her husband. Dad, take Mum away from here. Blake led Fred's distraught pregnant wife away and tried to explain why Fred had murdered the man. She took it badly. Lakelandite tore strips off Argent for what he had done to Anna, who was seen as Fred's best friend. Elsewhere, Fred was hiding at home, scared and sad, not sure what to do or where to go or how Anna would take his being hunted as a killer by their son. It was like a Mack truck had crashed into him. He was haunted with all sorts of negative thoughts. He hoped Blake and Lakelandite could explain his reasons for acting out of character. He resolved to wait in his room for his son, where no one would see him die. Fred stood in the dark, peering out the window of his bedroom, wondering how he could die without looking like he wanted to die for his crime. He was so depressed. He lay on his bed in the fetal position. He had never wanted to die and stay dead more in his entire life. Lakelandite arrived to kill him and saw him asleep on the bed. Fred had cried himself to sleep. Lakelandite looked at him and couldn't mock him as he usually would. He pitied him. He left and told Argent he would never hurt a hair on the head of Fred, and if he tried to kill him, he would kill Argent himself. Argent was angry, but not stupid, and rescinded the order. Lakelandite would not kill him, not out of loyalty but pity. When he had looked at Fred, his heart had broken. Fred looked like a broken man. He was broken because death had come for him only to bring him life again. The Grim Reaper soul within him that would never let him die forever had touched him and brought him back to life again and again. He was as much a slave of his soul as Lakelandite was Argent's slave. Fred had cried because he knew he couldn't die and stay dead. It saved his life from Lakelandite this time, and now he slept on, unaware of the dilemma he had caused. Chapter 4: Lost in Misery. It was midnight, there was a purple tinge in the sky, and the street lights were harsh beams of white in the air. Fred had finished working for the day, and Fred Alexander was feeling depressed and miserable as he wandered the streets of Melbourne City. He went down past the river, deep in thought and regret. He was trying to forget his troubles. His wife had left him and wouldn't speak to him. He wished he could die. He was so depressed he felt death was the only answer to his problems. This was selfish, not thinking of the ones who would have to pick up the pieces if he died. Fred looked at a nearby rooftop, and being nimble and fit he proceeded to climb to the roof. The edge beckoned to him. Fred dreamed of death, taking him to the mental peace of death. He did not fear suicide. He's seen death before as a former coroner. It was death, actually murder, which brought him there. He was a murderer. He regretted his crime and would not have done it if he had another option. He took a step off the edge and felt a rush of air, then a sudden all-encompassing pain, then nothing. He was dead. He thought and felt nothing. The Grim Reaper walked into the street, no doubt to take the soul of the dead man, the only witness who had just left a nearby pub with a bottle in a brown paper bag. Seeing what remained of Fred, the amazed drinker couldn't believe his eyes. he shook his head and dropped the bottle in a nearby bin, thinking he was drunk enough, and wandered off to try and forget what he had just seen. The Reaper looked in disgust at this man and continued on his way to the dead and mangled body. The Reaper grumbled as he touched the mess. Amazingly, when he did, he disappeared and the dead mess sprang back to life in the form of Fred. "Damn," the reformed and now alive man moaned. Disappearing into thin air was all the remaining gore and evidence of the suicide. The next day came and Fred was busy talking to alien delegates at the Intergalactic Political Summit. A man walked up to him and asked him how he was. A miserable Fred answered. "Alive, so I must be all right," but this was not what he wanted. He would have preferred the opposite. The man Lakelandite had told Fred, "You couldn't die if you tried." Fred knew it. He had often tried to kill himself and couldn't. This made him feel sad and ashamed that there could be no retribution for his sins. "You look like the canary that the cat ate. Are you all right, Gramps?" Lakelandite asked. The great-grandfather walked off nervously. Lakelandite walked over to another man, Blake, who was standing on his own. "How's Gramps? He's been acting weird," said Lakelandite. "Fred's depressed. He's been a bit depressed since Anna stopped talking to him," Blake said to his son. Anna, Fred's wife, walked up to them. "Mum, have you seen Gramps? He's acting weird," said Lakelandite to Anna, his stepmother. Blake was a time traveler too, actually, Fred's younger self. So Anna was by that technicality Blake's wife too. The one the world thought was her husband. "He's a killer. They act weird," said Anna coldly. "Stop talking nonsense. I've killed more than him. He had to kill the man in self-defense," said Lakelandite, who was a hitman for his boss Fate. Anna was Fate's cousin. "He's very depressed. When I was ordered to kill him, I saw him at home lying on his bed in the fetal position. He'd cried himself to sleep. I couldn't kill him. He wasn't even hiding. It was as if he wanted to die. Tempest told me he caught him swan diving off a building in the city last night when he went to the pub." Tempest was Lakelandite's brother, who had Fred on suicide watch. "Anna, this is serious," said Blake. "He knows we can't die." Anna was naturally concerned too. They walked up to Fred, who was trying to be alone in his misery. "Hi," said Fred, sadly lost in thought. "Was it you who sicked Tempest on me?" He was watching the witness of his suicide attempt. It was Tempest. He was holding a drink and was watching Fred like a hawk. "Yes, we were worried about you. Tempest has been following you," said Lakelandite. Tempest, the timekeeper, usually lived in a pocket universe out of time, watching time go by. He was so worried he had been following Fred in person. Fred was his father. The night before, believing Fred was safe, he had popped into the pub to buy a drink. A feeling overcame him, so he left the pub and ran outside, where he caught Fred swan diving onto the road and then returning to life. Tempest walked over to them. "Hello, Temp, nice to see you in the real world," said Lakelandite. "I would rather not be here, but I was needed," said Tempest, who had a splitting headache in the real world, which was why he lived out of time in the pocket universe. Fred looked awkward. He had seen Tempest when he came back to life. "You really need help," said Lakelandite, stating the obvious. "Thanks, boy, I didn't know that," said Fred sarcastically. "I had an idea," said Tempest, ignoring them. "What is it?" asked Fred. "Is it time-related?" asked Blake. "Yes," said Tempest. "Then what's your idea?" asked Fred, doubting anything could fix this. Tempest smirked and concentrated on his time-shifting ability, made a few hand gestures for effect, and it was now a week earlier when Fred lay murdered and naked, ready to be hacked up and disposed of by the man who had been killed by Fred. "What use is a dead alien? Let me dispose of him," Fred's killer had said. "No, I'd rather you didn't hack him up," said the Reaper, who was Fred's soul. "Misguided loyalty," said Fred's killer. "No," said the Reaper, who disliked zealots like this killer, who he was tired of and knew he knew too much to live. But the Reaper could not do anything yet. If he removed his weapon, a scythe, Fred would lose his head to the killer's axe, which it was stopping. They knew they were in a stalemate. If one of them removed their weapon, the other would strike. The cupboard door where Fred was trapped to die before opened. They were startled. "What the?" said the killer. "What took you so long?" moaned the Reaper. "What took me? I'm not even meant to be here," Lakelandite snapped, walking up to the killer, who waved his axe at Lakelandite, who hit the axe away with his sword called Doom and slew the man. "You bloodthirsty psychopath," said the Reaper. "You are welcome," said Lakelandite, disintegrating the body of his victim to remove the need to get rid of the evidence that caused all of Fred's troubles. Fred would just think Lakelandite was a heartless killer again, nothing new, and Lakelandite went back to his time to find Anna and Fred happy again. Fred was no longer depressed because in Fred's readjusted timeline he had not been a murderer. His mind was now free of the misery he had been trapped by. So his life had returned to normal, and all involved in the near disaster were unaware of what happened on the repaired timeline.
I've had it coming for years, I couldn't avoid it. It was either him or me. I have been caught dead, I can't escape my fate. I've had it coming for years, I couldn't avoid it. It was either him or me.